The following clip is from the North to South Show, live every Monday and Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, where we talk SEC football everything. Now, we'd love to have you out for next show, but for now, hit that like button down below, hit that subscribe button, and enjoy this clip. This past weekend, Demetris Robertson, that is right, Georgia wide receiver Demetris Robertson has transferred yet again. We all know that he started out as a Golden Bear when he started out at California, transferred to Georgia, and now he is going to be playing in Navy and Orange next fall when he takes on playing for the Auburn Tigers. So what is D-Rob's role going to be in at Auburn? How does this really affect Auburn's wide receiver room and everything like that? How does this make this team stronger? I mean, we could even talk how this affects Georgia, although I think I don't want to say that they're going to be just fine without him, because I feel like that's kind of disrespecting Robertson. But I think Georgia, we all know they're still pretty good at the wide receiver position. But first of all, let's talk about how D-Rob has got to this point and how he has done up to this point. So obviously, started at Cal, I mentioned that, and then in a couple seasons after his first 2 seasons at Cal, transferred to Georgia and played 3 seasons with Georgia. First of all, in his first season ever, he earned freshman All-American honors when he caught for 767 yards and 7 TDs in his freshman season. So obviously, Demetrius Robertson was a highly, highly recruited and highly thought of freshman when he first came into college football. So then the injuries started to hit, which is really unfortunate because he's a really, really talented guy. Dealt with a lot of injuries over his time, whether at Cal, whether at Georgia. This guy has dealt with a lot of injuries. So up until then, the next season didn't really do much, was dealing with injuries, and then it took until 2019, so after when he finally transferred to Georgia, when he finally had his next relevant season where he caught for 333 yards in 2019 and 3 touchdowns. Now you look at last season, and last season was a big, big struggle for Demetrius Robertson, as he only caught for 12 passes and 120 yards. So injuries have been killer for him. There's also something strange going on with him in terms of the law, and I was reading that there's some arrest or felony that he's charged for, something like that, something that's stealing a car boot. It was really difficult for me to read and understand what was going on, so don't fact check me on everything like that. All I know is that there's something going on with him and the police and everything like that, and they're trying to get that figured out for him to finally get to Auburn. But enough about that. We're here to talk about football. We're not talking about him outside of football. So I think for Auburn, and you look at Auburn, especially offensively this season, you know your strength. Their strength is the running game. You got Shivers, you got Tank Bigsby. They are really, really, really stacked in that backfield. I think we all know that. The quarterback position for Auburn this year, lots of question marks. Still, we don't know who's going to be the guy. Do you want Bo Nix? Do you want TJ Finley? We've talked about it multiple times on this channel. There's so many different scenarios that could be said. What if Bo Nix isn't the guy? I'm guessing Bo Nix starts. In my educated guess, I would say Bo Nix starts for the Auburn Tigers. Now, I think if there's any change going to be made, it's going to be made after that Penn State game. So you're going to be looking at week 4, the Georgia State game, is when maybe your TJ Finley steps in and takes over. Maybe when your Davis steps in for Auburn and takes over. I don't know, but that would be my educated guess right now, is that Bo Nix will be the starting guy. So he will most likely be catching passes from Bo Nix this fall. So where does Auburn win with Demetrius Robertson? Now, the wide receiver position, we talked about it a bit earlier, kind of a weak spot for Auburn right now. You could lose guys like Seth Williams last season, obviously, I think one of the better wide receivers in the SEC for sure. You lose the fastest guy in all the NFL draft in Anthony Schwartz. You lose a guy in Eli Stove. So those are 3 of your top pass catchers for Auburn, all leaving, going on to the NFL. You look at who they have left. You got Canyon, who is going to be, in my opinion, right now without Demetrius Robertson. And I kind of talked about this leading up to the season and all my previews for Auburn and everything like that. He's my guess for the best guy that Auburn has at the wide receiver position. But I also look at another guy like Xavier Capers to be another really, really big target for Auburn this season. What I see for Demetrius Robertson and how he fits into this role at Auburn is this is your third down guy. going back and watching through all of his tape, this isn't a guy that really is going to be a huge deep threat. He's not going to catch many 30-plus yard balls. If you look at most of the passes that he had been targeted, I could say only 2 of them from all the targets that he got last season, because I just went back and watched them all, only 2 of them were 20-plus yards, and he only caught 1 of them. He missed one that was thrown by like DeJuan Mathis against Florida, and then JT threw a nice ball to him in Mississippi State, and it was like a 20-25-yard game. But this isn't the guy who's going to be your huge deep ball threat, who's going to make many explosive plays down the field. This is just a guy, watching through his tape and everything like that, he has a knack for finding open field, and I think that's really, really key and good for Auburn this season, especially when I talk about this guy being your third down guy, because this isn't your guy, again, to be a deep ball threat. This is your guy to run. He works the outside really, really well, whether that's on curls, whether that's on flats, whether that's on out routes. He has been working the outside really, really well, and that's where you saw most of his pass targeted to with Georgia. Also, he's really good at the wide receiver screen. That's where Georgia used him a lot last season. Wide receiver screen, wide receiver sweep, all that kind of stuff. They threw a lot to him from behind the line of scrimmage. So you're going to see a lot of plays like that where you're trying to get this guy into open space because he has the agility, he has the speed, he has all this kind of stuff to do some damage in that sense. He's not going to catch the ball that far down the field, but he can get that ball down the field. So that's where you're kind of looking at. You look at Auburn last season and how they did on third down efficiency and everything like that. This team was actually very, very good at it. Now, they went 45%, somewhere around 45%. If we're being very, very technical, they went 44.9% on third downs. That finished around 32, 35, somewhere around there in all of college football last season. Now, that's very, very good. But we know that Auburn is very run heavy, and I bet you a bunch of those, a ton of those, were picked up in the rushing game. And sometimes in third down situations, you can only pass the ball. You're in obvious passing situations. For example, a 3rd and 7, most likely you're not handing it off to Tank Bigsby. 3rd and 10, most likely you're not handing it off. Even like a 3rd and 4 sometimes. Sometimes you need to throw that ball because that D-line has just been stuffing you all game, and you got to throw the ball to get that extra third down. This is your guy because he's not the guy that is going to beat you deep. Again, I said it. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but he gets open, and he gets open quick for those short 5 yards down the field, 10 yards down the field. He will find open space, and he will give you a spot to throw the ball to him to get that first down. So that's where I really, really see D-Rob working well with Auburn this season, is being that third down guy and getting into open space and being able to find him and maybe even do some damage down the field in terms of once you get him the ball in open space, run him some wide receiver screens, hit him on the outside, get him in one-on-one matchups, and let him beat out his cornerback. Demetris Robertson, I think, is a great, great pickup for an Auburn Tigers team that, let's say, if there's any player other than quarterback, excluding the quarterback position, if there's any position of player that Auburn could have gone out and got, I would have taken a wide receiver 110%, because even offensive line, like I'd say the offensive line is weaker than the wide receiver position, but one offensive lineman isn't going to change your whole offensive line. One wide receiver, on the other hand, I don't want to say it changes the whole room, but it gives you one more target to throw to a lot and get a lot of yards and all that stuff, where one offensive lineman, hey, you still got to block 3 other defensive linemen or 4 other defensive linemen in that sense. So